Welcome into NFL Takes by Tim. This is a YouTube only podcast for now, so hit that subscribe button and like button below. There was a ton of NFL preseason action over the weekend, but there was a story none bigger than Shedeur Sanders' debut for the Cleveland Browns. After Pickett and Gabriel were injured, they were not touching Joe Flacco in the preseason, which meant Shedeur Sanders got an opportunity, and Shedeur Sanders shined in his Browns debut, going 14 for 23, 2 touchdowns, scrambled a little bit, had 19 yards running the football, and Shedeur Sanders got everybody as hyped as you could imagine. You had people questioning why he went to the 5th round. This is ridiculous after one preseason game. And he did play really good. He looked smooth. He looked aware. He looked accurate. And he did things that made it appear that he was a 1st round pick in the NFL draft, not a 5th round pick. And there's lots of excitement, lots of reaction. It will be the number one story across all national sports talk shows this week, and I'm talking about it too. And as I was preparing for this thought came into my mind. My children and I went to Costco, a grocery store in the Midwest, on Friday. And we went to the store, and Costco has a slew of, or an array of samples. You walk around the store, you try these different samples, and a sample in a grocery store is so much fun. We found a sample that was a healthier version of an applesauce, and my kids loved it. They were digging their spoons in that cup over and over and over again, and it was an amazing taste in their mouth, and they wanted more when it was all done. The very next day, we're in a car ride going somewhere as a family, my wife and I and our kids, and we give them the same applesauce that they loved in the store, and they hated it in the car. They gave it back to mom and dad, because they didn't want it. It was not the applesauce that they were accustomed to. But just the day before, they loved it. And I think that's an accurate way to view preseason football. Preseason football is a sample, but not necessarily the real thing. Because Shedeur Sanders, as amazing as his performance was, it was against backup players and the Carolina Panthers and a vanilla defense. You cannot get too excited about preseason football if someone plays really good. Although you could get very worried about preseason football if someone plays really bad. Just like a sample at the grocery store. If you try a sample at the grocery store and it stinks, you know never to touch that thing again. But sometimes a sample in the grocery store can get you excited and give you false vibes and make you want to buy it. And then you get home the next day and it stinks. So, although Shedeur Sanders played great, you also need to take everything into perspective and contextualize it and understand that it was one preseason football game against backup players on the Carolina Panthers. With that said, Shedeur Sanders did play well. The Cleveland Browns quarterback options aren't great. Joe Flacco will be QB1 for the Cleveland Browns when week 1 opens up. And then they got Kenny Pickett as an option. They got Gabriel as an option. They've got 5 or 6 quarterbacks on their roster. Although it is just preseason and Shedeur played great in a preseason game, he should be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns in week 1. One of the decisions I hate the most by NFL franchises is when they start a quarterback like Joe Flacco or Russell Wilson, and the organization and team has no chance of being a successful organization. The team is basically saying, at best, we are going to be a 500 football team with Joe Flacco or Russell Wilson. When you have a player like Shedeur sitting in the locker room that could easily provide a much bigger spark for his teammates around them and also provide a much more explosive playmaker as an offensive weapon. I think it's a mistake for the Cleveland Browns to go with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco had an incredible run a few years ago for the Cleveland Browns when at the end of the season he caught fire and the Cleveland Browns, they caught fire, and somehow he took them to the playoffs. And it was an incredible story. Joe Flacco, a former Super Bowl winning MVP, carries the Baltimore Ravens. Now he's bouncing from team to team, goes to Denver, goes to the Jets, goes to Cleveland, and in his 1 year in Cleveland goes 4-1, throws for 13 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. But Joe Flacco is the definition of throwing crap at a wall and hoping it sticks. Flacco just launches stuff up there, which is entertaining to watch, but is not necessarily a consistent recipe for winning football games. He had good numbers with the Colts last year, 12 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, but his record was 2-4 in the 6 games he started. And he's certainly the veteran presence, but the dude can't move. He's 40 years old, and Shedeur Sanders gives the Cleveland Browns such a versatile offensive weapon for a team that doesn't have the best team around him. You know, some would argue that that's the best case for Joe Flacco. You got to put him in because he doesn't have the best team around him. I would argue differently. I would argue that because your offensive weapons are limited, you need to put in the quarterback that offers the most versatile offensive weapon, and that's Shedeur Sanders. There were some things that Shedeur did in the preseason game that Joe Flacco couldn't, like scrambling for 19 yards, like being elusive and smooth in the pocket. And Jackson Dart also played well for the New York Giants. And it's like, we're going to start Russell Wilson, who has bounced from team to team to team as he finishes his career. Played poorly, got benched for the Denver Broncos. Should have got benched for Justin Fields in Pittsburgh. And now he's going to resume a starting role for the New York Giants. Why? When I see these decisions by NFL franchises, what I see are NFL franchises living in fear. And I think from an owner's perspective, if they see a Shedeur Sanders or a Jackson Dart struggle at the beginning of the season, there's at least an end goal. There's at least improvement happening. If you're an owner and you're watching Russell Wilson or Joe Flacco struggle and your team is 0-4 to start the season, you're going to be way quicker to pull the plug on that head coach than you would be if Jackson Dart or Shedeur Sanders were starting. Because they don't only give a spark to the team around them, but they give an excitement and a spark to the ownership group. So there is no reason why Shedeur Sanders should not be starting for the Cleveland Browns in week 1. Because he gives the organization such excitement that Joe Flacco doesn't. And same with Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart gives the Giants an excitement that Russell Wilson doesn't. So why would you not go with the player that could potentially give you more than Joe Flacco. We know what Joe Flacco is going to give the Browns. We know what Russell Wilson is going to give the Giants. Go with a versatile offensive weapon and play Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Don't be afraid that he might not be ready or that he might not have the experience of NFL game action like Joe Flacco. Play the kid, start him, and give him a fair opportunity to bring a spark to the fan base, to the ownership group, and to the players around them. You ask any player within that Browns locker room, do you want to watch Shedeur Sanders or Joe Flacco? Which player do you want to play next to? And all of them are going to say Shedeur Sanders because of everything that I just talked about. So it's really not that hard of a decision. Yes, they drafted a guy in the 3rd round, but he's coming back with injury. You can come up with an excuse. The Browns ownership group, led by Jimmy Haslam, wants to watch Shedeur Sanders play. And if Joe Flacco starts, which he's going to, and the Browns have a slow start to the season, which they're going to, the ownership group is going to be less patient and way quicker to pull the plug and say, yeah, you're not our head coach. You're fired, Kevin Stefanski. But if you put in Shedeur Sanders immediately, you get that ownership group excited, and you get that fan base excited, and you get his teammates playing with more motivation and more energy because of that spark that a rookie quarterback that has lots of hype brings to an organization. So that's my take for the day. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and like button below. Appreciate you joining me on this podcasting journey, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.